this is Catherine O'Connell and welcome to Lawyer on Air. If you are looking for inspirational stories about women in law, then this is the podcast for you. Join me and my lawyer ladies as we enjoy a glass of wine after a hard day at work and talk about the world of women in law. I hope you will enjoy getting to know these amazing women who I am so proud to share a profession with. I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi everyone, welcome to this fourth episode of Lawyer on Air. I'm Catherine O'Connell. Today I'm joined by Hitomi Komachi, who is a Tokyo-based senior associate working in the well-known firm of Allen & Overy in their energy and natural resources and infrastructure team. Hitomi works on energy and natural resource transactions globally, and they include the areas of project finance, acquisition finance and restructuring, and she helps energy and infrastructure investors carry out cross-border projects. For example, she advises government agencies, financial institutions, and developers on large-scale energy and infrastructure projects. Some of the things we see around, like new power stations and natural resource assets. Hitomi currently is a leader in the firm's Hydrogen Interest Group, a team that I understand she actually set up on her own initiative. Hitomi grew up in Japan, Hong Kong, and Switzerland, and developed her career in London, Paris, and Tokyo. She graduated from the prestigious London School of Economics and Political Science, and she obtained her Bachelor of Laws in 2008 from the College of Law. After graduating, she was soon scooped up by Allen & Overy London office. And after 2 years in London, she crossed the channel to A&O's Paris office, where she worked 4 years and also managed to master the French language, making her a trilingual along with Japanese and English. I believe that Hitomi also tucked in a client secondment as well during that time in London, and that was working for the Japan Bank of International Cooperation. And I hope she tells us a little bit about that experience today as well. Hitomi was admitted as a solicitor to the England and Wales Bar in 2010. And from 2016, she joined A&O's Tokyo banking team as a senior associate. In 2020, she became a member of the Tokyo Bar Association and joined the ranks alongside me as a gaiben, or a foreign registered attorney in Japan. And in 2020, she was also recognized as a rising star in that gaiben category in the 2020 Legal 500 directory, one of the most renowned published law directories there are. I recently had the distinct pleasure of hearing Hitomi speak on a Zoom call at a few Tokyo event, and she was amazing. I was immediately drawn to how frank she is in expressing her ideas around gender gap in Japan and how she's managed to build a career in a sector, I guess, that has a bit of a hefty gender imbalance. And let's face it, the legal sector itself is also quite traditionally male dominated. But Hitomi does seem to find that to be water off a duck's back. Let's get into it, because I know you want to hear from Hitomi herself, not from me. And so I'm really, really super proud to have you as a guest today. Hitomi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Great. And today we're going to be talking about lots of topics, your career, how and why you moved from, Europe over to Japan, and maybe you had some reverse cultural surprises when you came to Japan, your views on diversity in organizations, and I'd really love you to offer up some of your gems of advice for young lawyers on the importance of mentors and how to find a niche. How does that sound?
That sounds like quite a daunting task, but I'm excited. I'm up for the challenge.
I'm sure you'll be fine. Look, today's opening question for you is, here we are online and Japan's gone into its third state of emergency. But if we were going to be meeting up in person, where would we be? Do you have a favorite wine bar or restaurant that you love to go to? And what would you be choosing off the menu today?
Yeah, so it's quite a nice season at the moment in Tokyo. Sunshine, and it's getting warmer. And on a day like this, I do miss sitting on a terrace in Paris or in London. And there's a place near my home that offers that kind of environment called Emilia's in Jingumae. It's like a 10-minute walk from Harajuku. It's an Italian place. I love pasta. All my friends and family know that I'm a massive pasta fan. It's my go-to comfort food. For a drink, I'll probably get like a spritzer or a sparkling wine. If I could drink alcohol, I just had a baby earlier this year. So for the time being, I'm on rooibos tea. But but yeah, I wish I could order a spritzer right now.
Fantastic. Oh, gosh, we are so close together, actually. It wouldn't be very far for me to walk to Harajuku, maybe 20 minutes. So let's try and do that sometime after.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, let's do that after we've got a chance to do that when this...
That would be great.
That'd be lovely. Cool. And so for our listeners today, it's just interesting for them to probably note that you and I really only recently met online in March when you were speaking for an International Women's Day event on the topic of finding your niche and managing your career. And that was through FEW Japan. And I was really impressed by your wisdom there. It seemed to be way beyond your years, and you really had some great and insightful observations about your career. And so I want to delve into your career at the start, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Catherine. That's it was one of the first events that I spoke at on the topics like diversity and career management. But I was very excited by the topic. I got really into it as I prepared for it, and so I'm so happy to be able to come back and speak about it again with you for this podcast.
I really thank FEW Japan or FEW Tokyo exactly to show me that you were there in this planet and that you existed, because it was through that. Yeah, it was through that I thought I've got to have you on the show, because the other reason was I didn't just want you to be kept to FEW Tokyo. I wanted you to have your stories unlocked for a whole lot of other people to listen, because they're just too magical to let loose in a smaller group. I wanted them to be free amongst a whole lot of other people. And so let's talk about your career. You are Japanese by origin, and I know you spent your formative years in Hong Kong, Zurich, London, Paris. I mean, let's face it, that's not your typical Japanese lawyer background. And I just am really interested how it was that you got to be in those places growing up. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about your life, maybe up to your age of 13, 14, which may be covering your Hong Kong period as well. Could you go into that a little bit for me?
Sure. Yeah, so I was born in Tokyo, but my family decided to follow my father as he got stationed from one city to another. He was working for a mega bank at that time, Japanese mega bank, and he was fortunate enough to get stationed in various financial centers. So that was Hong Kong, and then Zurich, and then London, and then he came back to Tokyo. Going to Paris was a decision I made during my career. The first post was Hong Kong, and then each city we ended up spending about 5 years. So up to I was 11, I was in an Japanese educational system. So I went to Japanese school in Hong Kong. I hang out with Japanese people, Japanese friends and families, and was sort of part of that Japanese bubble.
Right.
And then when we moved to Zurich, that's when I started my sort of American educational phase, I suppose. My sister and I went to international school. I had to learn English there, and then I started making friends at the international school, which was a bit of a shock to the system. But I think I would say my time in Zurich was probably the most important one, as I adapted and met a lot of people from different countries throughout my time at international school. And then off I went to London when I was 17, just for my last year of high school, again with my father and my family. And then I ended up staying there for university and law school, and then ended up getting a job there.
Wow. Okay. So Hong Kong was basically a Japan school. And so you were mostly speaking Japanese and using Japanese in Hong Kong. But then the switch to Zurich, you were international. You were in an international school. And right. So you switched to the US kind of frame of mind and an American way of speaking, perhaps, over there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. My international school in Zurich was very much based on an American educational system. So They had a few British teachers, but most of the curriculum was American style and advanced placements, and so that school followed the American curriculum mostly.
Wow, right. And so it's really, thanks to your dad that you got to travel around at a very early age and get your eyes quite wide open to all kinds of experiences.
Yeah, that's right. And I got used to moving around a lot. So even as I sort of became a lawyer at Allen & Overy, and I've stayed with the firm all my career, which is actually probably not that common amongst professionals these days. But I moved from London and then Paris back to Tokyo, every 5 years or so. So I've gotten into a habit, it seems like, of just moving around, a bit of an international nomad.
Right. But your baby now is going to make you stay in Japan for a little bit longer, I would think, for a longer time than just 5 years, right?
It's actually the first time coming back to Japan where I just thought, okay, this is where I can stay for a while. I can't stay forever, right. but yeah, I'm actually finally feeling a bit settled, more settled than usual.
We are glad to have you back. I'm sure the firm is as well. But I want to go back when you mentioned you'd gone at age 17. I think you said that was through to Paris, right?
17 to London.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. London, right? So at age 17, you're in London, but there was something that happened before that. I think when you were around age 15, you had a significant fortuitous meeting with a lawyer who was really, truly important to you. Can you tell me about that experience?
My school in Zurich was in the middle of a farm, and it was quite laid back, I must say, and it was very small. And as we had lessons, there was like cow manure, and I don't know, it was just very laid back environment. But the one thing that they did very well at the time was an annual career fair, inviting the parents and their friends to come and talk about their profession. And so there I was very lucky to meet a Korean female lawyer who worked for a global bank in Zurich as an in-house counsel. And she allowed my friend and I to shadow her just one day at the bank, which really opened my eyes a bit. So I had some exposure to law in that my great uncle is a lawyer, and some of our family friends were lawyers as well. But she really sort of opened this door, a glimpse into what it's like to work as a lawyer at a bank. And so she explained how the bank was structured, and it's a global organization, so a massive structure chart. And she talked us through that. She also talked about how she's the go-to person on the Sarbanes-Oxley law that had just come out. So she was a specialist on tax. And then she took us out for a lunch. So it was sort of like, seeing the first, the corporate benefits, like working for a bank, and obviously appreciated the free lunch. So all of that was very exciting for me. But the whole, the biggest thing that I took away from that, I think, was her constant sort of reminder to us that we are the future. You girls can do what you want to do. Don't hold yourself back. And it was a sort of constant message that she gave to us throughout the day. And I now understand why, looking back and knowing about the diversity issues that our profession faces, and knowing about women around the world actually facing the same diversity issues and challenges. But back then, that wasn't it wasn't that apparent, but it was just a strong message that came through to me, and I just really liked her optimism and her charisma, and I think that's what drew me to the profession in law.
Right, but before you went to that careers fair, you didn't know she was going to be there.
No, not at all. I just met her that evening.
Yeah, it's like happenstance. You just happened to be there and she happened to be there. And was it the Korean nature of her that attracted you, or did she stand out from the other people who were there? What attracted you into talking with her?
I think going to an international school, it's sort of like everyone is different. And I like that environment. And I will probably touch on this a bit later, but I'm so used to being different that I don't know. To me, that her being Korean and female, it wasn't sort of a conscious attraction point for me, but she was very, very positive, and she was very charismatic. So I think her personality was what attracted me to her. But we went around the fair, and she was the person that I was inspired by most.
She really took care of you. I think she must have seen something perhaps with you and your friend and taking you around and looking after you. Are you still in touch?
Yeah. And she did very well because my friend and I both ended up in law. And my friend is a sports lawyer, and I'm a finance and energy infrastructure lawyer. And she's still working for another bank, and she heads the diversity initiatives for that bank. So she clearly had a calling, and this is something that she's very good at, inspiring the younger generation.
Right. And I think perhaps from that, you are now trying to also inspire the generation that's beyond you, your younger generation.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, it's not just her, but I had loads of, female and male mentors over the years. And I definitely would like to give back through sort of giving the messages and encouraging the younger generation coming up.
Right. So you had a combination of people, like your great uncle and some other friends, and also this Korean fabulous lawyer who you met. Did that then entice you to go into law? Were those the triggers that sent you to thinking about where you could study law and perhaps doing that in London?
Yeah, that's right. So at the beginning, my great uncle was also, he also kind of showed me what a Korean law is like, but very different from the Korean mentor. He was one of those figures that would always bring sort of peace and order to an otherwise chaotic situation on an environment. And so in terms of sort of the protection of justice and protection of orderly procedure and so on, he's a kind of person that showed me that side of the profession, which is also interesting. Yeah, a combination of those people sort of made me think about a Korean law. And since I was in an American system, I thought about going to an American law school after going to university in the UK. But then when I was at university, I heard about this great thing called the training contract, which UK law firms offer.
Yes.
Where the UK law firms recruit very, very early, which I think is a great thing to do. If university students are recruited by these firms, they offer living stipends and scholarship for law school. And then for the 2 years vocational training that's required for the UK solicitor qualification, you'd be employed by the firm. And so it's sort of like 4 years of free education training and possibly a job at the end. So it just sounded like a much better system to me than going to a very expensive law school. So I was immediately drawn to this, but when I heard about it in London, and I decided to apply.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think you mentioned it, when I first heard you, it was too much of a good deal not to have a go at it. I think they bring you in and really very much look after you. And that's obviously, to me, a reason why you've stayed with the firm, because they've nurtured you and you've been able to be under their wing from the very beginning. Would that be right?
That's right. Yeah. And a thing that they do very well, Allen Overy and other UK firms, is that during the 2 years vocational training, they allow you to sit in 4 to 5 different departments. So it's very good for people that don't know what to specialize in, because practicing law is one thing, but finding your area of specialty is a completely different, and different art altogether.
Yes.
And depending on where you end up specializing, it's a completely different sort of career path, be it working at the courts or working on more commercial or corporate matters. So it was very good for me to do that. I was initially very much drawn to arbitration and litigation, but I quickly realized that I'm a bit too impatient for it. I like the fast-paced commercial corporate environment. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I compare that to, say, New Zealand, we don't have the rotation of seats in different areas, but we do have that system where, for example, I would appear in court for a family matter or, theft or defending someone who'd been doing speeding or a drink driving in the weekend, right, and appearing in court on Mondays, and then would be doing business sales and transactions and immigration and all kinds of things. So getting that exposure at a young age, I think, is really important. So as you've just said, you find what you're drawn to in the area of law, because there are so many different areas. And yeah, even though you didn't like litigation in terms of it not being fast enough, for me too, it wasn't where I wanted to go, but I was so glad I had that grounding in litigation, standing on your feet, appearing in court and being able to look after people in that kind of way. So I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that, and it's great advice for people to think about which firms they go into, how people will look after them as they come through, and think about their career, because it's a big investment to go into law, and we really need to think about these things and have the opportunity. So I really like that you did that. And then I guess after that, you went to Paris. So was that another opportunity offered to you that you saw and you jumped in, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so throughout my rotation, I was thinking about what I wanted to specialize in, and I like energy, infrastructure, and natural resources, the sector I specialize in now, because of the idea that we're creating something tangible. So large-scale power plants or a cement factory that might turn a country around, or huge projects that really is sort of national news, And so I really like that about the sector, and I was sort of starting to think about what I could do to really sort of work on my specialty. And at that time, after my 2-year training, I had quite a bit of exposure to the financing aspects of this sector, but I hadn't had that much exposure yet to the construction side of things, in terms of actual construction contracts or operational contracts that are needed to run these infrastructure projects, large-scale construction projects. So I sought advice from some of the associates that I worked for, and they said that a couple of specialists on construction are based in our Paris office. So I had a chat with my supervisor at the time about my interest to go to Paris and work for those specialists. And I sort of just, there wasn't a sort of position at the time, but I sort of I then went off to do some other work. And then eventually, I think after a year or so, the position opened up. And that's when I went across the channel, as you said.
Right, yeah. So you sowed the seed yourself, though, quite early by saying, I'd really love to go into this area. And when an opportunity came up, you were thought of first. So that's a really key aspect, isn't it? To be able to say and seek out opportunities within the firm. And at the time when you're working for associates, when you're in a seat and rotating, you're working with the associates, aren't you? So it was wonderful they gave you that advice as well. But I'm glad that you're telling us that you sought that out and, put your hand up, and you were not afraid to do that.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that when you're junior, I mean, I didn't know the bigger picture of our practice and how our practice was evolving and growing. And what I didn't know was that at that time, the pioneer of our African practice, who I ended up working for very closely in Paris, he was growing his business because our African practice was the demand on coming from the clients on African work was just growing exponentially. And that coincided with the growth of the first wave of renewable energy projects across Europe and Africa. And so, because the benefit of these renewable energy projects is that they can be quite small scale, but they can be rolled out very quickly in emerging markets, including in Africa. So there was a big appeal there for our African clients. And so, I didn't know all of this, right? And so that was very lucky because I had voiced my interest, I suppose. They said, give this girl a chance and see how she does.
Yeah, I think it's more than just supposing. It really did come from you sort of putting your hand up. And the thing is, we don't know when we are a junior or beginning as a solicitor, we don't know what the big picture is, but we are just lucky or fortunate that people around us can see something, or if you show a spark of interest, often people will pick up on that and put you in the right direction. But a lot of it comes from you. And that's what I'm trying to say. The opportunity was there, but you were also very insightful to sort of think, I'm going to take it forward, because that takes something to do that. And maybe your time in Zurich with your international crowd helped you to be quite assertive in that point. But I do like that you actually took your own path there, and it came to you eventually. Yeah. Definitely. And then you had a secondment to Japan. So was that during your time in London or in Paris? I thought it was London. Was that right?
That came right after Paris. So I ended up staying in Paris for 4 years.
Right.
Yeah. And then, so I know it's very complicated. So it's really hard to follow, right? Because it's just all over.
I should be listening to your CV a little bit closely, but there's just so many different chances there.
So many steps. Yeah, exactly. I know. So I came back to Japan in end of 2014 to go on client secondment at JBIC.
Right.
Yeah. So that was a position that ANO wanted to fill. So that was sort of proposed to me, and I was really excited about that, because by this point I had done a few projects with JBIC where JBIC was the key financier in the deal. And so I kind of saw them as like the prima donna of the financing world. You know, they can come in and basically say, this is our policy, or this is our condition, and that's it, take it or leave it. Like, they were in that kind of powerful position. And I really wanted to see from the inside how they operate and what their priorities are. So I actually jumped at that opportunity. I really wanted to come back and do that.
Right.
Yeah. So I ended up going on secondment for a year and a half.
You kind of almost interviewed them while you were working with them, right? So when the opportunity comes up and ANO need to fill that position, you're there because you've already worked with them. So you're a natural fit.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they felt that way, but yeah. I came in and I asked loads of questions. And so JBIC is an export credit agency, a Japanese government agency. And I think I offered so many. Well, I asked so many questions about just from like the sort of private sector perspective, and, why don't they go and market their services and things like that? And they were just like, what?
Marketing? What's marketing?
Yeah.
What's marketing? People come to us. We don't have to market. Yeah.
Yeah. And talk about rankings and things like that. And they, they're just like, no, we don't care about rankings. Like, you just do what we see as a strategy that's important for our nation. And so it was very eye-opening to see how they carry out their mission, which is very much focused on the Japanese government's strategy on particularly on energy and natural resources. So I ended up working on a few sort of strategic natural gas projects for Japan. That was very, very interesting.
Very interesting. I'm sure your father was watching you avidly as you were working through with another bank. He would have been quite interested in that, I'm sure.
Yeah, his area of specialty was private banking and trading and things like that. So he probably saw me as like someone who's really pursuing her niche, probably.
Yeah, I think you could ask him that. If you've never asked him, maybe ask him that sometime. But when you were a child, does your dad or your mum remember what you said you wanted to be when you grew up? That big question we always have, what you want to be when you grow up. What was that for you?
Yeah, so I kind of dotted all over the place. I think I wanted to dabble in classical music at one point, and then I was interested in teaching, and then in advertisement as well at one point. And then I was also interested in makeup, so becoming a big makeup artist. I was kind of all over the place. So I think they would say it was quite unexpected that I chose a career in law. But one thing that they would probably agree is that I quite like tangible things, so building things. So probably would have ended up somewhere in energy and infrastructure at some point.
Right. Because I was going to ask you, if you hadn't had that happenstance meeting at the careers fair with your Korean lovely lawyer, I wonder whether you would have gone on one of those other paths. You're talking about tangible, but law sounds a little bit almost intangible, but it links to tangible topics and sectors. So perhaps you would have ended up there eventually. But do you think you could have had a different path if you hadn't had that chance meeting that day?
Yeah, so I think what really drew me to law is being a go-to person. And she talked about it, the mentor I met at the career fair. But I probably would have sort of found that attractive about professions like engineering or something technical like that.
Right.
So through that, I may have ended up in energy and infrastructure. Who knows? But yeah, I absolutely think that's one of the benefits of being a lawyer. Being asked questions, being the sort of expert on something.
Right. So thinking about your work now, I think you're on maternity leave right now, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. But your role, you obviously haven't forgotten about the fact you are employed and you are working. What do you really like about what you're doing in your job now with the kind of role that you have in Tokyo?
Yeah, so I kind of see my sector as like back in the sort of international school environment where you see so many people from different countries. So say if we're working on the construction or the financing of a power station in the Middle East or in Africa, there are lots of different financiers from different countries, different export of goods, and different contractors coming in from many different countries. And it's very exciting to get all of those people together in a room. It's one of those sectors where those kind of meetings still happen, where you have, more than 30 people come to one location every month or every other month and try and bottom out hundreds of pages of contracts. There's something to it. It's sort of like an international convention. And
Right.
I do feel like that I do enjoy that kind of setting or environment. But on the other hand, I actually do enjoy drafting as well. And so every so often I do get a chance to just sit all day with like a loan agreement or something. I sort of, that's my old comfort spot where I can just sort of tuck away and do my thing for the day. So I quite like that as well.
That's the real sort of original craft of a lawyer, isn't it? To put the wording together. So I like that. I mean, I'll confess alongside you that I like that kind of work myself as well. I think it's really central to a good lawyer to be able to put the intention of the client into something that's going to work for them later, and so that they can have less risk and be able to go through their contract period very successfully. So I do like that. And I know one of the other things that you say, or a mantra that you stick by, is being really clear about what you want to get and how to get there. But sometimes we're consumed by these day-to-day tasks and it feels like there's not really enough time to think about the how. But I know from having heard you that you have several tools in your tool belt that you've felt really useful to guide you. And I know you've got a lot, but perhaps you could, for today, just cherry pick a few of the principles that have helped you to lead out that lawyer life and build your niche in Japan.
Yeah, sure. So over the years, the firms offered quite a lot of training, particularly in the recent years, training targeted for women. And at first I was like, what's this about? But having done it, it was really helpful actually, because there are certain skills I think that as women sort of tend to not think about too much and would be helpful to think about. So yeah, so I'll just talk about a few. So the first one is really about communication skills and how we adapt our communication style to different people. And a lot of us probably do this unconsciously, but in this training, we did personality tests to see, what we're really like and what others are really like. And if I'm an extrovert and if I'm talking to an extrovert, then that's fine. I don't necessarily have to adapt my communication style, but if I'm talking to an introvert, then just think about what type of communication would resonate most to that person. And so that was quite eye-opening for me, because it takes the sort of speaker out of the speaker's hat and made me realize that it's more about the person that you're talking to,
Yes.
and really understanding that person. And that kind of comes back to career, because I think having a support network is really fundamental to having a good career. And that's for me, that's been very, very important from the get-go, as you heard from the career fair, but also trying to figure out what I should do, what's happening into the sector in the next 5 years to 10 years. There's so much that we can read or hear on news, or just do research ourselves. It's a lot more helpful to have a whole network of people globally, who are experts on the sector as well, and hear their views too. So, and the communication style is key to getting their support. So that's sort of a couple of ideas, I suppose. And the other one, the one I found most useful probably in the last 2 years or so, is about sales and sales skills, because lawyers, myself included, do like the sort of alone time with the contracts and drafting and like the technical side of our jobs, but it's also important to be able to sell our services to the people who need it. So tracking the services that we were able to sell, or really sort of planning the business development days or time has been quite important, and is increasingly important as I get more senior.
Right. So you're talking about keeping a track of projects that you're working on, or clients that you've met, or potential clients, and tracking it almost like a system that salespeople use when they're tracking their clients or potential future sales. Is that how you're making that analogy between a sales guy or a salesperson and how you're operating in your work?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So CRM, I think,
Right, yes.
the sales, system. I think having spoken to a few people in sales, they're always like, oh, lawyers don't use CRM, and some lawyers do use it. Not everyone uses it, but I think it's quite and it doesn't have to be that sophisticated. I mean, at the beginning, to just simply track how many projects we're working on, and how much that's bringing into the firm, and just sort of visualizing that helps in terms of knowing sort of the market value or value you bring to the table.
Right. So you're visualizing your client pipeline through that system. And also you've got that ready. For example, if you've got a chat with your boss, you can immediately draw on those aspects that are hiding in your CRM. Is that how you also use it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to just have that at the back of your mind, just talking to anyone, just to be able to talk about what you do. I also found that's sort of, people tend to shy away from that a bit, maybe in our profession, or maybe also women as well, just sort of shy away from saying, oh, this is what I've done, or this is the target, and give a figure. And so having those kind of figures at the back of my mind helped me have those type of performance discussions as well.
Yeah, you're saying not to be shy about that, to be really proud and consider that what you've achieved is really important as a human being, but also just to take yourself further forward as well. Is it important for us to be a little bit more vocal about what we've achieved?
Yeah, definitely. And oftentimes, looking at others, and also I've been told this too, we tend to underestimate ourselves and maybe overestimate others. And it's so important to because I think we forget, all the good things that we've done, and maybe we just focus on that mistake that we made, or we could have done that better. But there's so many things that every one of us is doing that's positive, and so we shouldn't forget that. So I think people in sales or maybe bankers are used to sort of putting figures on their achievements, and it's more natural in other professions maybe, but but for us as lawyers, it's maybe it's less natural to do that. So yeah, it was quite refreshing to look at it from that sales perspective.
So true. And I think during your training, tell me if I'm wrong, but during my training, I certainly did not get any advice or guidance on tracking and putting a financial number on, the potential that's in the pile there, or in the pool, ready for what could be drawn on, especially if a partner can help you later in the future, for example. But we didn't really have that way of analyzing our work. We build work as part of what we need to do for an hourly charge rate. We bill out to clients, but not seeing it in that bigger picture, I think, may disadvantage lawyers. And so I hope that you're also helping your other associates and other people in the firm there, and beyond that, your other lawyer friends and other people who you work with, to help them also set up their kind of CRM. And are you doing that kind of thing to help others?
Yeah, so that was the sales bit came out of targeted training for women. And that really drove home to me the fact that especially us women may be lacking in that sort of sales way of things. And, men tend to do that more naturally, perhaps. And so, yeah, I'm talking to everyone that would listen in the firm and outside of the firm to just plant that idea. Because as you say, yeah, it's not something that comes naturally. We all want to just deliver and fill our time and meet our deadlines and so on. But it's so important to see our career as a business and think about how to take that forward, because change will happen. And all these, we have to live with all these risks now, with COVID and technology and competition from inside and out of our legal profession. Yeah. So if we don't know our value, then we may not be able to protect it.
So true. Oh, I love that. If we don't know our value, we're not able to protect it. That is so awesome. And I know that perhaps that training is quite unique in Japan, or perhaps within firms. I haven't heard of other firms that do that specifically for women. So kudos to your firm for doing that. And I know that there's also other diversity initiatives that I think your firm is doing. And I'd really love you to tell us a little bit more about that, because I do know this is something that you're also passionate in helping organizations find and discover and work on diversity initiatives.
Mentorship is key for diversity. And I think so having, mentors that are sort of similar to our background and seeing those mentors do things may be inspiring. And so that kind of goes for the senior lawyers in our sector, but also being aware that we can be mentors as well for the younger generation. And one other thing that I think we discussed at the few events was something called reverse mentoring, where the junior staff mentors the senior staff. That's been very popular in my firm as something that really helps actually both the juniors and the seniors actually gain a lot from the insights that the younger members of the firm bring to the table. So yeah, that's been hugely successful and been rolled out globally within my firm.
Is that an optional thing, or is that sort of everybody does that as part of the normal culture within the firm now?
Yeah, so every time an initiative like that comes out, we tend to try out on a few people in different offices, and then gradually sort of, if it's popular, and then it spreads. So maybe this is the third or the fourth year of us doing the reverse mentoring, and it's spreading more and more. But yeah, it started in a few offices around the world, and then expanding.
That's wonderful. And you also do diversity in different ways too. I think you have mentioned in the past about calendar diversity, which is the first time I'd heard of that, and being very aware of not only, as we're talking about, gender or age diversity, but also across your different organizations, especially the projects you're doing. I'm sure they're reaching into different countries. So you have a calendar diversity. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's quite cool.
Yeah, that's right. So in our sector, day to day, it's kind of a must, because just to get the deal done, we have to know when the public holidays are in all of the countries. that are involved in the project. We can't have a signing day on a public holiday in one country. And oftentimes there are about 10 to 15 jurisdictions that are relevant to a particular signing. And so we would come up with a calendar just for that project. And then so that sort of expanded to us being able to talk to clients about, oh, okay, yeah, so your public holiday is coming up. What are you doing? And so it was great from that sort of BD or sort of just relationship perspective as well. I saw the other day that we're also running workshops, for example, on Ramadan. And this is an internal event, but for us to understand what Ramadan is all about and what's celebrated and what rules are followed and why Ramadan happens when. And so, so those types of trainings or sessions are being rolled out as well.
Yeah, it's very respectful to other cultures. It also allows those people to enjoy those holidays that they have and festivals that they have. And on the reverse, with, say, Golden Week coming up in Japan, we can be having our holiday also respected, right? And people aren't expecting us to be working, or perhaps if we are working, maybe delay on the response time. So I think that's a really quite simple but also very effective initiative you've got there.
Yeah, correct. And someone said managing cross-cultural diversity is about being polite as the first sort of as a first step. Yeah, so the calendar thing is sort of part of that, I suppose. It's sort of like everyone's got weekends and everyone's got public holidays, but different ones. And so let's respect them and maybe have a chat around it.
Yeah, that's right. Because Sunday and Saturday are not holidays in every other country. So respecting that is really important. I think that leads to, tips perhaps for long-term success as a lawyer. And that would be one of them, is being respectful across cultures and looking out for ways in which we can be respectful. But another tip you mentioned in the past was about leadership and taking up leadership roles. And I want to talk about that. And then I want to speak to you a bit more about sponsors and mentorship, because I think that's really important. But I think in the past you've talked about taking leadership because they're like a gold token. And I loved that expression of the way that you talked about that and how to be intrapreneurial, being an entrepreneur within the firm. And I thought you saw a couple of gaps, and perhaps that was maybe over the last year or so with the hydrogen interest group and the legal tech initiative that you got your teeth stuck into. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, sure. I think it was partially because of COVID and the lockdown. And me just sort of being bored at home that made me think about what I could do with all the time we have.
Oh, sorry. So you did these while you were on away from the office because of COVID-19.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of fueled the interest. So the hydrogen piece, it's kind of all over the news at the moment, isn't it? But the next sort of climate change and environmentally friendly energy source, that's something that we've been focused on over the last few years. We really sort of started to excel our pace on building our know-how and experience on it in the last couple of years, I suppose. And then I was thinking about bringing together, again, different people from our network, because one of the assets we have at A&O is that it's a very tight-knit network of more than 30 offices around the world. And so I could be sitting in Japan talking to Japanese clients, but they might be interested in investing in Germany or Spain or Portugal, who are leading on the EU front on hydrogen, with lots of different government support schemes available from the EU, the EU Green Deal, for example. And so together with the partners, we were brainstorming how best to utilize our network and leverage our network to bring the best sort of capability. And so we decided to set up this group, and so we have regular sort of update calls and share sort of our experience on this sector and our discussions with our respective clients in the local market. which has been very, very interesting. And I think it gets people excited to sort of have a space to, share and brainstorm. And through that experience, I thought, like before, I thought those kind of gold tokens of entrepreneurship would be sort of handed over to me at some point by someone senior, saying, Hitomi, now you can be an entrepreneur on something, you're tasked with this. But it doesn't really work like that in real life.
Exactly.
It's just a bunch of dialogues, isn't it? Just, you saying, oh, I'm interested in something. I'm interested in something too. Let's just get together and talk about it. And so I realized that, something extraordinary can just happen out of a discussion or a bunch of discussions. And so it's as easy as we want to make it, to start something, start something new.
I agree. Yep. I'm wondering whether those people who are around you are sponsors or mentors, or perhaps they're just your colleagues, but you are not just talking about it and saying that's wonderful, but you're taking it a step further. So was the Hydrogen Interest Group and the Legal Tech Initiative, were they really ones that you took forward, that you decided that you would take forward, or was it more of a team effort on that? And don't be humble.
Yeah, no, definitely a team effort on hydrogen and legal tech initiatives, right. And they're separate initiatives. And there's been a lot of work done already by the firm and different people on that. I'd like to think that there are aspects of it that I helped improve, like setting up a website for the Hydrogen Interest Group, and getting more people to join our group, for example. And I think our group is now over 60 to 70 lawyers globally. Which is quite a fair scale, given its sort of noble nature. On the legal tech side, it's also very interesting. And you may have seen that our previous global managing partner has joined a new law business most recently. And it's an area where the firm is focused on. So we have something called Fuse, which is a incubator for legal tech solutions based in London, and now expanding its wings to Hong Kong. So it's an incubator for all these different ideas on legal tech, which may get funding from A&O and other financiers. And it's great because you can discuss ideas with those innovators, and that helps us to come up with new ideas. I can't talk about all of the ideas that we're currently sort of working on and nurturing now, but
yes,
but there's a few that practicing lawyers like myself and others have sort of put forward as something that would be helpful, both internally and also externally. So something that is just helpful to have for internal purposes, and something that could be eventually marketed and sold to clients as well.
Sounds great. I look forward to keeping a pace with you on that and see what happens. I'm going to jump back to something you said earlier about a support network being fundamental. I think those were your words. And if I think about a support network, I often think of it as having your own board of directors, comprising of sponsors and supporters and mentors. Maybe they're people who help you get salary increases or negotiate salary increases, or maybe take a lateral career jump, or even start your own business. But perhaps, and I think this is true, your Korean woman warrior that you talked about earlier is definitely one of your board members. But how do you go about choosing that group of supporters? And I expect too that you have a message for the younger generation of women about how the importance of having a mentor in particular. I'd love to hear something from you about that.
Yeah, sure. And I really like your idea that it's a board of directors, because different directors have different strengths and weaknesses, and they bring something different to the table. And I think that's what we need as junior and mid-level lawyers in terms of our support. So it's good to sort of have different mentors and supporters and sponsors. And they're also individuals, and they also run businesses and extremely busy people. And so it may be that they that you think, they're too busy to help younger people. But I think a true mentorship is a two-way street, and they are also looking for insights and creative solutions from the younger generation too. And so long as we're open to the fact that we need to be helping them, and they could also offer some advice to us, then it's a sort of win-win deal for the board of directors and the lawyer being helped. And so, yeah, I suppose the message to the younger generation is that don't forget to help the ones that are helping you as well. And perhaps the best way to actually go about finding mentors and supporters is to think about how you can help them. But I also think that it's a great time to be a female lawyer, and even a minority a female lawyer, because I think compared to when I started my career 10 years ago, there's a lot more support and a lot more infrastructure, like the targeted training that I talked about for women and sales skills. There's a lot more infrastructure now, and a realization that the support towards women, for example, needs to be targeted. And you can't just have the same kind of support system for men, because women go off on maternity leave and come back. Right. Yes. And women have, different interests from men. We don't necessarily play golf, or we don't necessarily watch football.
We might, but we might
not.
We
might, but we may not. Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of unconscious bias points are out in the open. And so I think it's a great time for those considering a career in law and young ones coming up to be in this profession.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad that you feel that way. And I think the doors are opening and it is expanding, and that firms and businesses are knowing now that one size doesn't fit all. So I hear what you're saying. And the referral to board of directors, or one's own board of directors, I cannot take credit for that. I think most recently I heard that from my friend Royanne Doy. She's talked about it for a number of years, but I believe someone's written about it. But I do love that. And as you just pulled out, every board director has different expertise. Some are lawyers, some are financiers, all kinds of things. And so we all do, in finding mentors and sponsors and supporters, look for different people who can help us in different ways. And I loved your advice there. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because I want to know a little bit more about your routine that you have, your bookends for the day. So things that you do when you get up in the morning, how you get focused for the day. Perhaps it's a little bit different now because you are on maternity leave, but your regular, work that when you're working in the office, or as you have been away from the actual office, how does that look when you're trying to get yourself set up for the day as a lawyer going into your work day?
Yeah, so I was just trying to think about what I do for sure every day, and I probably have a cup of coffee every day.
Good, me too.
But that's a must on a work day. And then before COVID, I would cycle to work, but since lockdown, that's not been possible. So I try to do yoga if I have the time in the morning, and it's just good to sort of clear out the mind before the day starts. And then I'd get stuck into a piece of work that needs quite a lot of attention in the morning, because I'm a morning person.
Me too.
Yeah. It's great to get something done, like something big and chunky done in the morning, isn't it?
I agree. Yep. Yeah. Good. And so when you come home at night, then if you were in the office and coming back, what's the kind of thing that you look forward to doing to wrap up your day?
I sort of, I'm a foodie, so I try and have good food. Many times just delivery food, but with my husband, and we just wind down watching Netflix documentaries on street food and car racing and Formula One, and so that's a proper wind down for me, which I look forward to.
Do you have a word of the year or some kind of theme that guides you each year? Some of my guests have had these, and I'm really interested to know, Hitomi, if you have something like that.
Yeah, I really liked yours, by the way, Catherine. I heard from your first episode, maybe less like intentional,
Intentional,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, because it's all about like staying true to yourself, I think. And so that really resonated with me as well. Yeah, so I'm at a pretty sort of special time, I suppose, of being on maternity leave and finding a new identity for myself as a mom. And so I would say something like reloading, like loading
Ooh.
before like a nice sophisticated website shows up at the end of the maternity leave. But just sort of soaking different ideas and reassessing and reconsidering the plan ahead. And yeah, so lots of words with re at the beginning.
Yeah, something. I love it. Reinvent, reload. I mean, you
Yeah.
can load and then you can reload again if the loading wasn't
Reinvent.
quite right.
Yeah. That's also
Yeah, reimagine,
great.
reinvent, all kinds of wonderful words. I love that. So, would you have advice then for young lawyers and young law students coming up the ranks? Maybe something to encourage them?
Yeah. So yeah, young lawyers coming up the ranks. Yeah, I suppose some of the tools, like try some of the tools that I talked about. Just sort of take a personality test or compare or just observe people's personalities and try out adapting communication styles. It also helps from negotiation perspective as well. The other thing is, and Catherine, I think we talked about this at Few, was I was very interested by an interview that Christine Lagarde gave most recently. I think it was for International Women's Day as well,
Oh,
about
yes.
how in her 20 years of career in law and 20 years as public servant, she has never had any female approach her for a salary negotiation.
Incredible. Incredible.
That I could not believe that. I
Yeah.
just could not believe. I mean, that's shocking. And she said in the same period, lots of men approached her, obviously saying the bonus is too small and it doesn't really, it's not appropriate for his level of work. And so she had lots of men approach her, but not women. And so yeah, something to think about for especially the ones young ones starting off, because you have a whole career of potential salary negotiations to do. And yeah, my advice on that is definitely don't be afraid, or it's not something that, again, I suppose it comes back to the figure point. Like if you know your market value roughly even, then you can be more confident going into
That's
room
right.
and negotiating salary.
Totally. And knowing your value, also having all of those people that you mentioned, the people, the supporters, the mentors to guide you in some of the ways that you can ask for more. And it's perfectly reasonable. It's quite a stark example that somebody so famous has said that in her group, men have asked for salary increases and women, not even one. I think that blows me away thinking about that statistic. It's quite horrific. So thank you for mentioning that. Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that you wanted to mention, or that you've already said that you'd like to re-emphasize? Re-emphasize, there we go, is a re-word for you.
Yeah, I suppose I talked about like quite a lot of different bitsy things and ideas and tools and so on. But I suppose that the conclusion is the importance of managing a career, I think, and trying to manage a career and trying to plan ahead for the next 5 years or so, of a career. And I didn't do that starting off, but if I were to do it again, I'd probably always try and have like a 5-year plan, because people ask about it, and also because I think changes happen so rapidly these days. But bringing about a change ourselves, that the kind of change that we want, like on diversity, that takes years, and so it's so ironic that we are facing so many changes, yet the change that we want to make takes a long time, it seems. And so we still need to have a plan in this rapidly sort of changing world, and we need to keep at it, I think. And so it's important to manage your career and have a plan.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard often to think out 5 years, but at least if you have some ideas, when somebody asks you, what's your plan? What's your 1 year interim, midterm goals? If you just have nothing to say or, oh, I haven't figured it out, it sounds extremely vague and never comes across very well. So at least have a few things tucked away that you can pull out when you're trying to describe your goals. And then also, I think you would probably agree with me, is that if you say those goals, the people who are listening to you may have a way for you to get to those goals. So it's always good to have them ready to talk to people about.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think you would meet people that share the same passion and that share the same ideas, and off you go on the network. And it probably helps to meet great people.
Exactly. You can be thinking about the same sort of goals together and helping each other in that way. Well, this has been wonderful. I'm going to finish up, Hitomi, with the final Super Six, which is the quick fire round of 6 questions that I ask every guest to wind up our chat today. And so the first one is around cash. We talked about cash, but I'm going to give you, not literally, but just think about the fact that I might be giving you 1 million yen in cash in Japan. Where would you spend it? Your favorite store or destination? Tell me.
So I'm a massive beach bum, and so I'd probably go to Okinawa in a flash.
Oh, Okinawa's been a popular answer. I think we might have to plan a guest trip to Okinawa. That would be so much
that
fun.
would be amazing.
Can you tell me a book that you've read or are reading, or a podcast that you're listening to or have listened to that you recommend?
Yeah, so I quite like reading biographies. And last year I read Michelle Obama's Becoming. And this year I'm reading. Oh, really? Excellent.
Yeah,
She's great, right? Her
goodness.
story is just amazing. Yeah, and I'm reading Barack Obama's latest book at the moment, just to get both sides of the story. About their couple, about their relationship and so on. Yeah. But otherwise, I also like documentaries on Netflix. And the latest one I'm obsessed about is the Formula One Race to Survive documentary. And I never thought I would be into car racing, but it's a good one if you like drama.
I love that. I think going back to Obama, I think his book is about 800 pages and it's probably twice as thick as Michelle's. But
yeah, that's right. I'm still working through it.
and I think Michelle's you can also get on audiobook, and I think it's actually her voice. So I must do that at some point. I've read the book, but I'd love to listen to her voice. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for those. And for example, if you were stuck on a desert island and you needed to bring one person, one item, and one kind of food, you're a foodie, I know it's difficult. What and who would they be?
So I bring my husband because he's very resourceful and he tends to get me out of trouble. But then that means the baby is at home and we have to, go back. So I'll probably.
I think your baby's an exception to the rule. So I'm sure you're allowed. Yeah. Great. She's part of you.
In that case, I gladly go to a desert island with my husband and my baby and just spend time on the beach. And probably bring pasta. It's my favorite food.
Pasta, of course. It sounds great. All right. The next question is, if there was a famous person or celebrity that you would love to meet or have already met?
So pre-COVID, I was actually working out at this gym near my office, and I used to work out next to this famous Japanese singer, and from a boy band, from the 90s boy band called Lunacy. And so he was working out next to me, and I was not in a state to, go and talk to a celebrity. So I was too embarrassed to sort of go. But then he was very, very sociable, and he was talking to everybody in the gym, including myself. So that was fun. And I also went to Jay-Z's concert in Japan, where in Japan at concerts, you're not allowed to go on people's shoulders. But I didn't know about this rule coming back to Japan, and I was on my friend's shoulder, and Jay-Z called out to me because I was the only girl he could see in the crowd standing on someone's shoulder. So that was quite fun too.
Wow, That is very cool. Well done. Okay, so what's on your bedside cabinet? Am I presuming that it's that big book of Obama's?
Oh, I wish. My baby has just taken over every available space in my house. And so I've got diapers on my bedside table and clean ones if I'm lucky.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's diapers.
Oh, okay. And the place that you would like to visit or have not been, or you want to go post-pandemic when we can all fly again?
Yeah, I love traveling. So I would love to go back to Latin America. I've just been to one place in Colombia called Cartagena, which was very pretty. And I would love to go and explore this continent.
Wonderful. I haven't been there. I think I'll have to put that on my list as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I really recommend it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. And really, Hitomi, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Pleasure.
And your tips and your nuggets of advice. It's been really great to connect with you one-to-one in this way and amongst others who are listening. And so I really thank you very much.
It's been very, very fun talking to you, Catherine. And thank you so much for inviting me.
So how can people connect with you? Can we do that on LinkedIn or other social media?
Yeah, so I think I've posted LinkedIn and also a profile to the ANO website. And I've also got Instagram as well. So people can feel free to reach me on all of those media.
Are you posting food shots on Instagram as well?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Good.
It's yeah.
I will sign up. It's really fantastic. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And so anyone who's interested in connecting and learning more from you, they're more than welcome to reach out to you. Is that right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Be happy to chat.
Thank you so much. Well, I'd like to finish here, and we've had a fantastic conversation about so many different things. And I'm really grateful to you for coming along and being my 4th guest on what is hopefully a 10-guest season of Lawyer on Air in its first season. And I want to thank you for your honesty, being someone who really is a rising star in the legal profession in the Japan community, and a real beacon of inspiration. I'm sure everyone will agree. For lawyers of all ages and genders. And so thank you for sharing your journey, inspiring me. And I hope it's been inspiring for all of my listeners. For the listeners, please do like this episode and subscribe to Lawyer on Air. And do go ahead and share this episode with someone you think will enjoy listening to it and be inspired to live a wonderful lawyer lady life. And so that's all for now. I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of Lawyer on Air. I really hope that you were inspired by the story you heard and that you discovered something new about women in the law. It's my passion to share my stories of amazing legal ladies, so please subscribe to the show so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you can think of even just one person to share this episode with, that would make my day. I would love to connect with you, so jump on over to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter or Insta, where you can find me. The links are in the show notes below. Well, that's all from me today, and I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Lawyer on Air. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.